Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the latest Venture Forge podcast, where today we're talking about refresh, redesign, convert and Amazon content strategies for 2026. Or that's what I think we're talking about, whether you guys have something different or not. You guys and the audience.
Oh no, I think I might be in the wrong room.
Off your pop. You ejecting after 3 minutes we've been sat here, but that's not a good start, is it? But hopefully that's what you were all expecting. I think it's what you guys were all expecting. Before we kick off, let's do the usual round of intros. For you that have watched time and time again, apologies. I am still Andy. I am still from Venture Forge, an agency that exists to help brands become more commercially successful on Amazon. And we do most of our work across UK, Europe and North America. I'm joined today, as usual, by two of the great Venture Forge team, Jess and Rob. And we've got Lee, one of our clients, ex-client. Maybe we'll come on.
Well, it's still client. I'm still tied to the business.
To the business.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
To be clear, you've not sacked us. You've just got an interesting part of our journey going on before we go there.
Yes.
But before we get into the crux of the conversation, can I come to you guys for a few intros? Jess, maybe you first.
Yes, so like you said, my name's Jess. I am a senior account manager here at Venture Forge. I've been here for just about a year. I'm coming up to my anniversary. Before that, still worked in the Amazon space, and I was doing that for about 2 years-ish before I jumped over to Venture Forge.
And not look back since? Well, we haven't. I'm hoping you haven't.
No, I've not looked back.
Excellent. And Rob, over to you.
Yeah, I'm head of design and I'll be coming up for 3 years in January, so I've been here quite a while now. And previous to Venture Forge, I've worked in design kind of all my life, really, pretty much since I left school. And yeah, full kind of background in everything and anything, to be honest, design-wise, which is why I think it gives me a good perspective on the Amazon kind of front with dealing with different products and different companies. So yeah.
I think that's one thing that kind of excited me about when you joined our business, not just coming from an Amazon design background. I think having that broader knowledge massively helps.
I think so. When you come from like a packaging background and stuff like that, you kind of understand the kind of fundamentals of what you're trying to hit and what you're trying to tell people and kind of those marketplaces that you're trying to sell in. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rob. And then last but not least, Lee, over to you.
Ta-da. I'm the owner-founder of Trends UK, which is a toy company. It's in the top 50 toy companies in the UK. To give some context, they're rough, tough, around 350, 400 toy companies in the UK. If you go attend any of the fairs, it never ceases to amaze me how many toy companies there are. If you go to Nuremberg, the world's largest fair, that's mind-boggling as well in terms of the sphere and the depth of toy companies as well. I've been at Trends for 22 years. I won't go into too much detail other than that. It's still consulting the company.
Trade secrets.
Yes. But I've worked in the toy industry for 30 years-ish. Started at Hasbro, which is one of the world's biggest toy companies. That's how I started my career in corporate life, and then ventured out into other areas and started my own business.
Amazing. And it's pretty much your problem, your fault that I can't move in my toy room at home because I'm absolutely full of your product.
Yes. I like to think it's not all my fault. But
It's not all your fault, but yours and your colleagues in the industry.
Yes, absolutely.
I've just got back from brand licensing recently and kind of walking around there and looking at, I've got that in the house, there's that in the house.
Yeah.
That toy and licensing industry has got a lot to answer for in my household.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And then there's a whole other industry now that's coming through for Kiddled, which is a growing part of the industry outside of traditional toy, and that's a whole other area. Brilliant. You've got to look forward to.
Or actually,
can't wait. You are.
I'm probably already there.
audience.
I'm already there. I'm already there. Brilliant. Well, thank you for joining us, Lee. Rob, Jess, thank you for jumping on your first podcast with us as well. It's very much appreciated. Before we jump into the content, as usual, if you're watching this go out live on our Livestone channel, we always do our poll because we like to get a feel for where you and the audience, you the audience are with this particular topic. So somewhere around the middle of your screen, I think that's the middle. I've got no idea which camera I'm looking at here because I'm only on my 4th episode of the day recording these. But there will be a poll popping up now. And what we're interested in is which area of Amazon content is your top priority for this next year. Options will be coming up on the screen. If you're not watching this live, don't be surprised if nothing pops up. But if you are, please tick the answer. You can see how everybody else that's watching this is feeling and what their priorities are as well. Throughout today, we're going to be talking a lot, hopefully, if this goes to plan, or maybe not. If we don't have a lot to say, we might be out of here quicker than expected. But if you do have any questions, again, when this goes out live, we'll have a lot of the Venture Forge team online in the background. So somewhere along the bottom bar, there will be a Q&A icon. So if you want to click on that to get your questions in, I'm sure when this goes out, there'll be at least myself, Rob and Jess on there. But please ask away with your questions and we'll get back to you with answers in almost real time, depending on how complex they are. And I'll remind you of that as we go about today's conversation. So let's get into the content. Content of the content?
Content of the
Do we need to read? No, we won't re-record that. We'll go with it. That's the whole point. This is meant to be real. Lots to get through today. There's lots of different areas that we can get into. But maybe we can start off, I'll come to you two guys first. Content on Amazon can mean a lot of things. Written content, A+ content, storefronts. Where do you see value for brands at the moment? Where do you see brands spending most of their time and where should they be focusing with their content efforts?
I see a lot of effort in the imagery. We find that most shoppers nowadays are shopping on their mobiles. When you do shop on your mobile, you only see the first bullet point. So you might be spending loads of time going through your written content for people to only really see that first bullet point. They can obviously click on show more and then see the rest. But how many people are really doing that? It's mainly going to be your imagery on the product listings. People are going to be swiping through there to try and find most of the answers to the questions that they've got. So I would say infographics is my number one.
Your number one. How about you, Robert? I hope you're not going to say written text, given your job is to design all the visual stuff. Otherwise, this is going south pretty quick.
No, I think I would mirror what Jess said, really. I think you're kind of looking at the fundamentals of kind of that first touch point of where people are hitting first. And I think for me, the first 3 to 4 images are key. That's where you need to be selling your key features and your main USPs. Obviously, it's all product dependent because some products, if it's like like in technology, you've got lots more information to talk about. But even then, the first 3 are fundamental to get people interested and scrolling further down. A+ is brilliant, but it's really critical to keep people hooked from the off with those bullet points and the imagery. I think it's really key. And I think the key is not to repeat what's in the bullets that's in the images. I think you can make reference to them, but they need to be 2 separate things. I think the bullet should be kind of expanding on what the images is telling the customer. I think that's the key area. I think everything else is a drop down, but that's where you should be focusing first off. That's your first touch point, so that's where you need to get people hooked.
I think the way you started that off there, Jess, is that mobile shopping journey. I think last stats I saw was 60 to 70% of people were shopping on mobile devices. If that's in a low to mid price category, how much effort are you actually putting into researching and reading content when the imagery has to do with selling? Coming into your world of toys, you shouldn't need to write a lot of content like that to sell a toy. It's for visual, it's for brand, and yours is very much licensed products. You know, the image is doing the conversion and getting the customer hooked.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So on imagery then, Rob, what types of images work best in the product gallery? So when we're looking at stuff, I hear people saying you've got to fill all 7, it's got to be an infographic format. You're doing this day in, day out, probably evening in, evening out at the moment with the workload. But you know, what are you seeing works best there?
Well, it's very tricky. I think what I like to work to is 3 to 4 key images. And that's, I think, works across the board. I think every product, that's where you should be looking. 3 to 4 key images that incorporate infographics and the product image. I think that's pretty key. And I think dependent on product, say if it's a soft toy, obviously you're not going to need 5, 6, 7, 8 of those infographic style images. But that's where you would probably look to utilize the lifestyle shots. And that's where those particular brands, like the toy brands, that's where you kind of look to incorporate a lot more lifestyle. But I think 3 to 4 infographic images is pretty key. And I think that's across the board, to be honest, with what I'm finding. And I think with that as well, you can incorporate the lifestyle shots into those images. It doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other. Like infographics can be anything. Essentially, it can be over the top of lifestyle shots. It can be product shots. It can be expanded product shots. So I think if you work into 3 to 4, I think that's a good benchmark to where you need to be for anybody working on Amazon, I'd say.
But it's interesting there, you've talked about infographics and lifestyle. Do you think that's quite subjective sometimes? I think about your world, Lee, with toys. Who actually buys the Amazon? It's me and my wife, not my kids. But when we look at that product, we're not necessarily going, what are the functional elements of that toy and as an infographic? Sometimes it's the wow of the product and the photography and the lifestyle. And so you go, bloody hell, that would be a great present for my son or my daughter. In other clients that we're working with, you have quite technical products. We've got burglar alarms, for example, and cameras where it doesn't matter what the CCTV camera looks like, it's what it does that matters. So is that quite subjective then? Is it product driven?
I think you're absolutely right. I think if you're looking at like a doorbell, for instance, you want to look at what image you're going to be seeing rather than the product itself. You want to see that back end of it. So I think for those type of products, it's key to show the user how you're going to be using it. I think that's the key thing with selling any product. I think it's kind of, the product image is fine, you know what you're getting, but what are you getting when it's being delivered? And I think that's the fundamentals if you're trying to tell that story and lead people down that journey of kind of, you're going to get this is what it's going to look like in a box, but then this is
how it fits into your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think as well, it was really interesting when you said about not just thinking of it as infographics and lifestyle, put them together. I think a lot of people now selling on Amazon are quite aware that infographics are very important. And I think sometimes people overlook lifestyle, especially with more technical products. They want to get all of their points on, and it's just, a white background, the product, and then a bunch of little bullet points. Get your lifestyle in the background. It's important, to get those points in there. But yeah, show us what it looks like in our lives as well at the same time. Utilise both.
Non-Amazon question product for you, Lee. What sells a toy? When you're taking a toy to market, what really sells it? Is it what it does? Kind of, you've got a lot of educational stuff in your range. Is it what it does, or is it kind of how it looks? Is it the excitement?
Wow. That was a technical question for you guys down there. No, you throw me completely. You throw me. Throw me right under the bus. I from my point of view, with toys, I look at it through a consumer's eyes and a supplier's eyes. Right. So I from the danger from a supplier's side is that we use it as a marketing platform too much, as opposed to communicating to the consumer.
Yes.
So as a consumer, when I see it, as you say, I'd like to see the infographics. With toys, you don't need to overcomplicate it. It's not complicated product. However, in the products that we do, specifically in one category, electronic learning aids, which is a big category for us, preschool learning aids, there is a lot of content in there that lends itself to online platforms, and obviously Amazon being the most important for trends business, and argue in the toy industry full stop, versus on shelf. You cannot communicate what is in that pack.
Yes.
Or in that learning aid just on a pack, just with some call outs. You can't. And actually we even have problems, dare I say, communicating that with certain buyers, saying, well, we've already got that covered in a role play item. Well, it's not a role play item, it's an educational item. And let me tell you about the content that goes into this and the development that goes into this. It's not just, a button with sound or, with music. There's so much educational context. So I'm saying it's simple. It depends on the type of toys you're doing. But as you say, with educational toys, if you're selling a plush item, lifestyle images, cute, cuddly, does what it says on the tin. But with the type of product in the main that we do, those infographics are lifestyle shots that brings it to life and it lifts it are key. And videos, I got to say as well, are, for me, which is part of that info. It really does bring it to life and it illustrates that content. Again, I'm picking on this particular category within educational toys. We do have other categories, which maybe we'll touch on at some point. But that's That's also, I feel, is important. As a consumer as well, sometimes you get overwhelmed with the amount of information that's on there. And I'm like, can I just click on that video? Just give me a 30-second quick start guide. Right, I get it. Particularly on the techie type of product.
Yes, yeah. Well, there's a lot more to it that needs to come to life.
Absolutely, yeah. Maybe not so much with toy for me, but yeah.
And so it really came through there, though. Like the passion that came out, I could see it in your eyes. I've created a product that's designed to do X, Y, and Z in the market. And when I'm even talking to a buyer, they don't fully get it.
Yeah.
Do you not see there's a massive challenge here of you creating products that are tactile, they serve a purpose, they need to be touched and felt and brought to life? And then how do you bring that to life in a flat 2D web page?
100%. 100%, and that's become a greater challenge over the last, I'd say particularly the last 5 years. You could say 10 years. As Amazon has grown, it's become our number one account by far. Yeah. And the whole, I don't want to turn this into a history lesson on the shape of retail and the whole retail landscape, but not just Amazon, but online full stop. In terms of content, it's so important for us and communicating with our consumer. And as you say, we're not communicating in the main with children. We're communicating with mums, dads, grandparents, relatives, etc. With the education element, it's really, really important that we get that over. And depending on a license or whether it's our own IP, there could be elements that are tied into key stages of learning.
Yep.
So not just necessarily about the license, but that side of it. What are we calling out? It's worthy product, particularly in the economy that we're operating in right now.
Yeah.
People, in terms of their spend, they feel more comfortable spending on educational product.
It's got more value.
It's got more value. Yeah. It's not, I know we live in a disposable society, but it makes parents and grandparents feel better.
People are questioning where they're spending.
They are.
Absolutely.
They are.
Yeah. And it's close to the heart. You're not spending on a toy for the child, you're spending on their future.
Yeah.
That's a different type
Absolutely.
of spend. Yeah.
So, that's one side in terms of content. And then where our business started 20 years ago was science toys. And again, that's very content driven, very, overtly educational. And it's a certain audience for that. And we've had licenses and then our own IP, which, we're proud of, we've built up to be a very strong brand. But again, you're also fighting a lot of white noise on Amazon with a lot of commodity product, dare I say. So you're building a brand under an umbrella in that particular area, for example. It's difficult to bring newness and innovation because we only have certain price points and to get a return on that. So you are fighting against commodity items. So telescopes, microscopes, for example, science kits, where you're dealing with chemical content, experiments. It's just really important that we get what differentiates us versus, dare I say, a direct Chinese supplier.
It is. That's one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah,
absolutely.
For example.
Yeah, but I think it's a really good challenge to highlight because, again, the passion's coming through. You create your own IP, you leverage other IP, you bring great products to market. I want to take the focus off you now. How do you two guys make all of that come across fantastically and get Lee's point of difference across?
Yeah, how do you do that?
So I guess that is the crux of the challenge, isn't it? When you've got to try and make a product look fantastic, look really compelling on Amazon. We've talked a little about imagery, a little bit. Excuse me, that cup of tea's got something. Look, I've got a lumpy cup of tea there. That's wow, caught me. We'll stick to coffee for the next podcast. But we've talked a bit about the imagery and the infographics, but we've not yet talked about is A+, premium A+. What are your thoughts on the role of A+? I'm going to ask about A+ and premium A+, because I appreciate very different views on the value of it. But
yeah, I think, like you said, it's you're trying to convey that story. And I think we talked about those infographics conveying the first part of the story and getting people hooked. But the A+ is the perfect kind of avenue to filter down and kind of read more about that product. And it just goes into more in-depth features. Because like Lee said, you can't get across a science kit in 4 static images. It's almost an impossible job. You can tell people the key points, but you need to give people more information. And I think A+ is just like the perfect way to do that. A+ standard is very good, and it can convey that message very effectively, dependent on the product. And it can also tell a story about your brand as well. I think that's the key thing here as well. It's kind of that upsell opportunity that you've got to kind of sell your brand and sell your other products. And I think it's quite key for that, really.
I think as well as it being an educational piece, to talk about the product listing that you run, there's the comparison charts feature. Talk about the other products in your range, make it a cross-sales tool. So obviously most people variate their listings with, maybe other colours or very similar products, but, highlight different products in the line that maybe they wouldn't have stumbled across naturally. And same with the brand story. So I feel like that goes kind of hand in hand with A+. Again, like you were saying, it's a way to kind of connect the customer with the brand itself, and kind of build a bit of trust between the two. I know some of our customers will talk about, the heritage of the brand, how long they've been around, the quality and that kind of thing. But again, that can be used as a cross-sale tool. And I think a lot of people aren't using it like that. They're just using it to say, this is our brand. And it's like, well, come on, that's an education piece. Make it a cross-sales tool as well. Like link to these other products, link it to your store, and make sure that you're using all of those different types of modules to get the most out of the content.
That's interesting. I've always talked to clients about A+ being a conversion enabler. It's there to reassure them, give more reasons why you should buy this product. I love your view of, I don't know, we do this a lot anyway, but bringing that cross-sell opportunity in. Cross-sell, I think, can be interpreted a couple of ways. Literally cross-selling, or for me, it prevents conversion leakage. If you don't quite like the product you're looking at right now, here's another one that I sell rather than another one from a competitor. But I think for me, it still holds that position of a conversion enabler, is to help to convince the consumer to buy more or prevent them from buying somebody else's product.
Definitely. And it's your opportunity to maximize kind of to sell your brand. Like you've got your page, so you might as well do everything you can just to try and really sell it. There's so much noise on Amazon that you can get easily distracted. So you've got to really make it impactful and kind of keep people there. And I think, like Lee was saying, because we've not touched on A+ Premium, the great thing about A+ Premium is that extra video feature. You can have the one video in your infographics, but you can have a totally different one in that A+. So it just gives you that extra flexibility of selling different features and selling to that audience that wants to watch the video. So yeah, it just gives you more scope. It gives you more opportunity, and it's there, so you should use it and maximize it, really.
Yeah. On the back of that as well, so the new brand story feature that they've come out with now, Amazon, it's called shoppable collections, and that allows you again to put another little video on there. I think it's only about 10 seconds, but again, it's another way of showcasing the product, the brand, and like you were saying before, it really helps people put themselves next to the product. They can visualize that person in that video. Oh, that could be me with the product. So any chance that you get to throw a video in there, definitely take it.
I wondered when you were going to mention that new A+ feature.
I have been having such a good time playing with that feature.
I've noticed on our internal Slack channels that every morning last week there was a ping from Jessie, a ping from Jessie. It's great to see it.
Oh, I loved it.
So we've talked a lot about what you can do with that content, but not necessarily. Well, I suppose we've talked about the fact you can do A+, but we've not really talked about what you put in there. I think, Rob, you touched on something quite interesting. We talked about the role of imagery. I still come across too many brands. I think you've kind of gone there a bit, Jess, where they're just doing A+ and they're putting in some brand information. For me, I think the good old world of marketing went missing from Amazon for so long. People, I guess, back into your original world, Rob, are thinking about who's the consumer, what's the message, what do I need to say to them, how do I convince them to buy? Whereas the old world of infographics was whack up 7 infographics. If you've got 6, you're not as good as having 7. Standard A+ was have you got it or have you not? Surely what you're saying there, the good old marketing world of message, hierarchy, prioritization, that's surely got a bigger role to play here.
Yeah, exactly that. I think you've always got to stick to that key structure, really. That's what the fundamentals of that's why we're there. That's why you're there on that particular page. You're trying to sell that product. So don't get lost in kind of using content for content's sake. I think it's kind of, you've got to be strategic with what you're saying and why you're saying it. And I think you've also got to be really aware of your competitors, and you've got to make that comparison between what they're selling and what you're selling and what makes your product better. So that's the fundamentals of kind of Amazon, is that somebody might be looking at one product, but they've probably got another tab open looking at exactly
just one.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, 6, 7 different tabs. So you've really got to sell your product, and you've got to kind of understand who else is selling and why they're trying to compete with you.
Absolutely.
And I think that you've always got to stick to those fundamentals with anything that you're selling, anything that you've got to just be aware of everything and everyone on Amazon.
Yeah.
And
another point on what you were saying about the other people on the platform, something that I've started looking at as well is, say for example, the category that your product is in, it might be a smaller market in the UK, for example, to the US. So why not switch platforms, have a look what they're doing in the US? Because if it's a bigger market, more likely they're ahead of the game, and we've got some learnings that we can get from these other marketplaces. Same with like Germany. It's a bit more awkward because you've got to do the translation, but the German platform is the second biggest on Amazon. So there's a lot of learnings to be had.
I want to contradict you on that.
Oh,
yeah. I was at an event last Monday from a market analysis company, and the UK has just overtaken. So it's now US,
times.
UK. You're talking about £4 difference, but it's just for the first time ever just pipped Germany. So I don't know if it's UK that's growing or Germany that's shrinking, but we've got second place. We have got second place.
Nice.
We're talking there about content for content's sake. So what really peeves me off on Amazon is when you get to the video part on the carousel, and I'm looking at a technical product and I want to understand, how does this work? What does the back of it look like? Or how do I use it in my world?
Yeah.
What was behind this week? It was a dehumidifier. I had the pleasure of a collapsed ceiling from a water leak. I needed a dehumidifier. What was the video? It was when Amazon received it, they put it through the 3D scanner, and I got a 3D view of this product. What does it actually tell me? It doesn't tell me how it works, what it does. How big is it? Is it a big dehumidifier? Is it a small dehumidifier? Where does the water go? How do I empty it? I see brands missing so much opportunity by just ticking the box. I've done it. I guess in your world, Lee, where the product is all about experience, you touched on video earlier.
Yeah, no, and of course, I can speak passionately about toys, but again, I put my consumer hat on, and everything you're saying makes sense to me, and annoys me, as you said, because we can, as a brand owner, can get wrapped up in the brand message, depending on the item, the category, etc. But you can, consumer reviews now are so important, and they're so visible. There's no hiding as a supplier. Where once upon a time, when you're on a shelf, you bought, it disappeared. You'd see a returns level, but you didn't tend to get that much feedback unless there was a problem, a faulty item, for example. But I think there's a danger of over promising and under delivering if you give too much content. But the flip side of that is if you give as much information as possible, and quite basic information, we say infographics with a video that just tells you the basic workings, you cut down on your returns. Right, you cut down on, dare I say, on the piss off factor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it really does. So I think that is so critical now. And, we have lines that I know with the greatest will in the world, we will not get more than 3 stars as good as a product as I think it is. And this will be, I'll give you a small example. A science item that's been around since time began, a telescope. So telescopes and microscopes do what they say on the tin-ish, you'd think. But certain consumers believe that if you spend 20 to 30 pounds on a telescope, you should be able to see the remnants of the American flag on the moon.
Can you not?
Well, That's a whole other podcast, because did they really land on the moon? But we'll leave that one for our American friends maybe for another time. Yeah, that's a real I would get slaughtered for it. And I don't have any right of reply. I did in the early days go on there as another consumer, but I can't do that. It's not very constructive. But yeah, needless to say, I just think that is so crucial now with everything that we're talking about on the infographic side is the consumer reviews, because you are there to be shot at.
Yeah.
I can't think of any other retail channel in the world where on a single page you can see what the marketeer wants you to believe and what the customer really thinks.
Yeah.
Literally, you'd never get that in Sainsbury's, Argos, pre-digital age. That's a really good point. You've got all the marketing. Let's go extreme. The marketing BS. This is the best products in the world.
Yep.
And the extreme of the consumer reality. I can't see the flag on the moon.
And that's the danger, as I said at the start, of using it as a marketing platform. I've got the greatest product. I'm not saying you should undersell yourself. Of course not. But if you overpromise, underdeliver,
you get found out.
That's what your platform becomes.
Yeah.
So you have to get that balance right, I think.
Yeah, I think it goes into like new products as well. So, you've created a new ASIN, you've got the best infographics there, but you've got 0 reviews. Nobody wants to be that first person to buy a product. We're all so wary. The amount of pages I've been on, scroll down and seen that there's no reviews, and I go, I think I'll go to the competitor instead. So
100%.
Vine, it's so important.
100%.
Yeah, it's just as important as the infographic.
Well, I won't buy anything without a review on there, because I will not go first.
Yeah.
And I'm suspect, is this genuine? Even if it's a well-known item, is it from a genuine supplier? That's a whole other session in terms of, counterfeiting.
Particularly in your industry.
Right? The toy industry. But that is true. And I always, say for reviews, you can see when the reviews start coming through that critical number, whether, you can argue whether it's 10, 20 reviews, but the dial moves. The dial moves.
Yep.
If we're sat there for 3 months with no reviews, I get angry. It's not like you might as well just sit there and collect dust.
You're hidden. You're absolutely hidden. 100%.
You hit a wall.
Yeah.
Even if you get the advertising running on it, again, it's the same thing. You can be funneling loads of money in through advertising. But again, nobody wants to be that first person.
No.
So you are getting the views, but you're just not going to get conversion with it.
Or you've got to market to that many people to find the one that wants to be the first person that you ultimately
that brave person.
Absolutely. Well, imagine from a toy perspective, people are, say parents and grandparents who are buying educational toys and then storing them away for Christmas. You won't get a review for another, certainly a couple of months, 2-3 months, depending on how early, you are in that buying cycle. So, the earlier you can bring it in and build that up,
the more chances.
You don't necessarily, there are some toys you don't want in spring, summer, but I'm like, get it in because we need those reviews.
We need that momentum.
We need that momentum to build that. Yeah. That's
it's one thing we've not talked about today. It's a really basic concept that Amazon uses internal language. It's retail readiness. And I don't think they talk about the quality of what needs to be there, but it's having the title, the bullet points, 4, 5, 6 infographics, possibly A+. But one thing they talk about to be retail ready and ready to advertise is 15 to 20 4-star plus reviews, because at that point, from a consumer's point of view, think about each of those bits as a piece of content. Imagery, we know is content. A+, we know is content. On that page, that review count is content. If that's missing, the consumer won't trust it. If it's there with 4 stars, 20 reviews, all of a sudden, I'm buying the toy for Christmas. And it worked. Well, if I don't buy it, Father Christmas will buy that gift and make sure it appears down the magical chimney. Okay, look, I'm just going on a bit of a tangent on reviews, actually. I think there's some great work we've been doing internally with finding kind of little gems in reviews, because I think reviews can often be seen as what the consumer thinks, but it also tells you sometimes what they didn't know from the listing. And there's some phenomenal tools we're starting to use from an AI point of view that will scrape those reviews, give us the sentiment and tell us what the consumer really thinks. So if Mrs. Smith is buying the toy and getting to kind of going, oh great, it even does X, Y, and Z, well, why aren't X, Y, and Z in the review, in the listing in the first instance? So there's some great ways you can take those reviews and not just find how can I improve the product, what am I overselling or what's being mispriced, promised, but actually, what am I not telling the customer, or what am I telling them that actually then isn't manifesting itself as truth when the product arrives? So I think for me, even when a product's got loads of reviews, you should constantly be reviewing that and using that to hone that listing, because there's little conversion nuggets hidden in there all the time.
Well, that's great from a brand owner's point of view, because depending on the resource you have in a company, to spend that time and go through, whether it's your consumer services, whether that's something that you're contracting out or managing yourself, to have that time to go into that minutia, which you should do as a brand owner. But, those reviews can build up and you can miss things. As you say, from a product perspective, I mean, we tend to go straight to the negative reviews.
You do. You look,
right. How do we fix that? Right. Panic. Why have we got a 1-star and then why have we got a 2-star? Everybody goes to the negative ones. We've got to sort this out. But, within there, I'm sure there's some nuggets. And AI, there's an example. That's a whole other podcast, probably.
we haven't even planned that one, but that probably is where we need to go. AI for Amazon.
Yes.
But before we do, I'm about to get a ticking off from our marketing manager. We're 30 odd minutes in and I've not re-prompted for Q&As. So there's a lot we've talked about here. I don't want to take a bullet when I leave this room. So please, if you have got any more questions, please keep them coming in. I'll say we've got a full team here in the background that will be answering those questions if you're watching this podcast when it goes out for the first time on Livestorm. Guys, can I move us on until maybe the last 20 minutes or so? We haven't talked about storefronts. I know, Rob, from our little chat outside, you've got some opinions on that. What do you think what is the role of a storefront, I guess, first for a brand?
I mean, yeah, the role of a storefront is to support everything else that's going on. So I think the general rule of thumb is that when you're new to Amazon, you would get your products listed. So you list your products, you do your infographics, you do your brand store, you do your A+, and then you go onto your brand store. So that brand store is a perfect kind of platform for you to upsell. It's the perfect platform for you to tell your brand story. And I think it's just a really handy platform on Amazon to have that much space for content. I think that's where you can really make the most of it. You're not fighting with much else on that particular page at that point as well. So it's kind of a real key place to point people in different directions, point people in directions they're probably not thought of going, or directly lead them to the product they want. So I think it's really quite key, and I think it's key for it to be done well as well. I think it's that kind of thing again, not having content for content's sake. I think you can really lose grasp of why you're doing it. And I think you've got to be really strategic with what you're doing, where you're placing things. I think with the storefront, kind of going back to Jess's point about it being mobile first as well, you're kind of having to do a lot of work at the top end of the page, that kind of first kind of scroll. That's where people need to be directed to kind of where they need to be. I think it's kind of, you go on quite a few and you're just scrolling for a long time and it's just lifestyle shot after lifestyle shot. I think you need to be strategic with what you're doing and why you're doing it and kind of where you want people to go from that point. I think you can have a page that looks really good, but if people aren't getting to where they need to be, then it's pointless, really.
Two really interesting points you've raised there, Rob. I think one is it's probably the only place I know of on Amazon where other brands are excluded from. So if you're running advertising at a product targeting level or a keyword targeting level, they're going to come to your products on Amazon, which can then be covered with 20 or 30 other competing products. Brand campaigns, you can direct them into your brand store, and within that world, they're only in your brand store. The other thing, you've just taken me back to my kind of previous career as a web designer. And then the other thing that you talk about, we've talked a lot about the quality of content, not just content for content's sake, and you kind of repeated that point there. When I built websites, there was very few times you design a website, hand it over to a client and they go, that'll do. But you see very little challenge in the world of storefronts. Where, have you got a storefront? Yeah, I've got a storefront. Is it a good one? I don't know. I've got one. And there doesn't seem to be the same level of focus put on a storefront as there is on a website. And that, for me, that plays out to how little brands really value the role of that storefront and how strategic it can be. It is their website on the world's biggest shopping platform, but they don't often, in my opinion, give it that level of credibility.
That's it. And you can have so many pages. You can talk about so much. You can talk about your brand heritage, as Jess mentioned earlier, for you, that kind of particular brand. There's so many opportunities where you can not bog your listings down with certain information, but gives you that extra avenue just to kind of focus on some of the fundamentals that some consumers will be looking for, kind of those heritage brands, things that people trust. And I think with there being so much noise on Amazon and so many different products, and not knowing the legitimacy of kind of this product against that product, this is kind of another tool where you can kind of go, well, this is us, we are these guys, and we are trusted, and we've been doing it for X amount of years, and this is why kind of listings from this page are kind of the ones you should be buying, really. I
feel like Rob's just lit up here, found his areas. He's got more creative freedom in the stuff.
Well, I think so. I think you there's so many different kind of things that people aren't tapping into. I think it's just like you mentioned, it's kind of an end kind of goal. It's kind of tick, 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 tick. Oh, we need to tick that one off now. But it can be so much more than that if you kind of got that bigger picture kind of whole kind of service kind of approach to it. It's kind of one should concertina into the next, really. It should just be that kind of process from the off, really.
Yeah, I think as well, it's one of those content pieces that can always be edited and updated. Amazon give you a lot of data on the storefront about, the dwell time on the different pages. There's a new quality piece that Amazon have launched recently about what kind of modules results in what kind of dwell time on a page. And I've been testing a few of those features. But yeah, there's lots of data. It tells you, which page people are engaging most with, which one has got the most amount of sales. And you can kind of compare and contrast between one page and another on your own storefront and be like, okay, well, why is this one working so well and this one's not, when the products are so similar?
I think I really took your anger out on the mic.
I did there for a second.
I hope no one's listening to this with really big headphons. That'll be a huge thud down there. Look, perfect. It's real. It's real.
I think the key thing with storefronts as well, it gives you that opportunity that when you hit those seasonal kind of coming up to Christmas, I think this is where you can really use it. And I think people aren't using it. It's like that gifting page. I think when you go on websites, like sort of 10 years ago, if I was buying for family members who are a lot younger than me.
What, do you not buy for them anymore, Rob?
They'd get vouchers. But you would be going into those categories and you'd be going into those age categories. So why can't we use that on storefronts? I think it's just a perfect opportunity to get people like me and other consumers that don't know what they're buying. I don't really know what I'm going on to Amazon for, but I need to buy something. So I think if you know these brands, you trust that brand, you go into that brand store and you can then navigate through that to find kind of a direction of purchase. And I think, like you mentioned with grandparents buying, I think that's kind of an avenue where you can kind of lead people in the direction you want to go in for those kind of educational pieces, and kind of, because I think a lot of people for gifts are going on without an idea what to get. I go onto Amazon myself. Yeah, I'm talking from my experience. I go on not knowing. Yeah, exactly. And I think when you hit Amazon page, it's like, well, where do I start? Maybe I do start with kind of looking at brands I'm aware of or educational things, if that's kind of the avenue you're going in. And I think it's it's just a good way of kind of leading people down the direction you want to go through with content that's available to everybody on Amazon.
I think merchandising on Amazon, on the storefront in particular, is a real mistrick. I mean, Lee, your entire industry hangs off Q4. It's like live or die by it, but almost every other industry has peaks going through different seasonal events. Not all of our clients are proactively trading those storefronts with a Valentine's message, what's the Mother's Day message, what's the back to school message. And I think back to my retail days, I was working in a brand, I think when I joined it was about 70 million turnover, and there was a team of people whose job it was to merchandise that homepage. What's banner 1, what's banner 2, in the ladies wear section, what products at the top. That was, I'm talking like 10 or 15 people's jobs to do that. We've got clients in our portfolio that are turning 50 million plus, and there's not a team, there's a small team of people running the entire Amazon business. Have they got the same lens on that storefront? This isn't to be critical. I think this is probably a big missed opportunity in the Amazon world. Why is that storefront not being traded at least half as hard as your D2C website in terms of what's been promoted, where is it being promoted, what's the seasonal theme. I say in your world where your 50+% of turnover happens around that Q4. Should I be asking you this based on where we are?
It's I wouldn't say it's a running joke because it's not funny. But, at Q4 and Christmas, there's no getting away from it. And people talk about Easter and every day's a child's birthday, which is lovely and it's true. But in terms of scale, it's Christmas, Q4. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no getting away from it. And I, again, I don't want to become too specific during this podcast on the toy industry, but the challenges we have with a storefront or brand stores is most toy companies, unless they're just, very few are just, a brand or a license driven. We're quite fragmented in the way we're presenting. So it's a difficult, you have your own IP. Ideally, some people don't. Some companies are acting purely as distributors, so they're not brand owners. Licensing is a whole other spider's web because you are not in control of that license. So you may be beholden to the licensor's brand store. You're limited to what of course you can, infographics and the basics, but in terms of a storefront, that's somebody else's control. But bringing it all together and dare I say, some people argue this, maybe it's down to ego or maybe it's just down to a reality check that, most consumers don't know the name of a toy company. Nor do I care that they know about Trends or whoever. You might know a Mattel. You might know a Hasbro. I won't name any others, so I don't upset anybody. I don't want to upset anybody or exclude anybody. But realistically, it's really not that important within toys, in my opinion. It is about your IP, the message, in terms of whether the category that you're in, the license that's hot or not. It might be a brand that has longevity. It's not waiting for the next big movie release. It's quite complicated.
So we've just launched an entire service around brand licensing. And as you say, that industry comes with its whole challenges. Yeah. Are you selling Trends products or are you selling brand product? Yeah. Where does it sit? Where does it live? Yeah. Who controls it creatively? Is it you or is it the license owner? Yeah. It's a whole host. Maybe that's a podcast for another time. We'll invite you back into that one.
I'll have fun.
We can have events.
Oh, trust me.
Brilliant. 2-hour podcast episode coming up on that one.
Oh, easily.
We'll bring beer. We'll bring biscuits. We'll sit in for a proper session.
Don't put beer in me and talk about licensing.
Brilliant. Well, we've probably got another 10 minutes to run this episode. Please keep the questions coming. We'll hopefully keep the answers coming as long as the questions aren't too complex. If you're watching us live for the first time, just be able to touch on advice from you guys. If I was working in a brand and I was looking at a major content refresh, I use content in the most generic sense, be it video, be it A+, be it written listings. What would your advice and what would your pointers be?
Take advantage of all of the different content pieces. And like we were saying before, don't forget about reviews. It's so important. Your content could look amazing. Your store could look amazing. There's no reviews. People aren't going to buy it. So that's a big one from me.
Very good.
I think it's just that have a plan. I think you've got to understand what you want to do at every kind of touch point, really. And I don't think you want to be decided on that when you come to it. I think it's always better to have that overview of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve from the off. And have that in mind from the offset, really, because if you don't have that, you're not going to have good content anywhere. You're just kind of ticking the boxes. Yeah. So just plan, and then it's down to the execution. But good planning always gives good results in terms of creative, kind of everything. Everything comes off those first kind of meetings and planning.
Thank you, Rob. Lee, any thoughts?
Well, I think having gone on the journey that I've been with Amazon over the last, particularly the last 5 to 10 years, which, as everybody knows, and particularly in this room, but anybody watching would know, it's been phenomenal. And we've learned in terms of, content and A+ content and a whole other language with Amazon and the dark arts and everything else that comes with algorithms, and that's a whole other podcast. I still think that it's the basics of the message you're trying to communicate, and I'll always come back as a consumer, as opposed to being precious about the brand or the license. Yes, bring it to life. Yes, make it exciting. Yes, have videos and lifestyle. But again, don't overpromise and underdeliver. And like you were saying before, the piss off factor of, some very basic things, front, back, 360, what does it do? I think there's a danger of overcomplicating things.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's great thoughts. Great thoughts. You've actually stolen my thunder, because that was pretty much the point I was going to make about thinking about the consumer. So you've now left me to try to quickly think about how I can summarise. I think between the two different sides of a room, I think what I've heard from you just is there's a whole host of features and capabilities out there. There's an ability to do everything. But I think from what's coming from this side is think from a consumer's perspective, prioritise the message. So just because you can do 100 things, and you might want to say 100 things, it's about that prioritization. How can you maximize what Amazon gives you the opportunity to do, whilst getting the messaging right and the positioning right to really convince that customer fairly without over-promising that yours is the right product to buy? Nodding heads. I think I might have just, okay.
Sold.
Sold. We're done. Ladies and gents, we're done. Thank you very, very much for joining us for this podcast episode. I've really, really enjoyed this one. I think creative and content is a much misunderstood part of Amazon that is often deployed in the wrong way. And it's been great for you guys to knock that conversation around. Rob and Jess, thank you for joining us on your first Venture Forge podcast. We've done all right. We'll let that one slip. But no, thank you for joining us. I hope to see you on many more. And Lee, thank you very much for making the trip to join us today and sharing your thoughts and experience.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.